Hey there, good morning. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Time for another edition of Tropics Talk, of course, focused in on Tropical Storm Elsa. Just got the 11 a.m. advisory right before I started recording this video, so let's get right to it. Remains a fairly disorganized, or at least a more disorganized looking storm at this hour. Winds are down even a little bit further, 60 miles per hour, and the big change in the past 24 hours is Elsa is moving much more slowly. Much more in line with the movement of a typical tropical storm or hurricane at 13 miles per hour as opposed to the breakneck speed it was going at over the past couple of days, 28, 30, 31 miles per hour. Yeah, it has definitely slowed. We'll talk about why in just a second, but the big, I think, change in this latest advisory is that now parts of southwest Florida, the coast of Collier County in particular, the waters offshore of Collier County, are under a tropical storm watch, meaning tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 48 hours, as I've been telling you all along. If we're to see those tropical storm conditions, that would be on Tuesday. Now, why has Elsa slowed? It's because it's getting away from the area of high pressure that was steering it to this point. Think back to Friday when this was first moving into the Eastern Caribbean. It was due south of that strong area of high pressure, which is fairly strong this time of year, giving it that strong easterly kick, allowing it to move at that 30-mile-per-hour pace. Well, a front, you can see it there over northern Florida, has cut into that ridge of high pressure. And with that, as it backs further off to the east, remember winds go clockwise around high pressure systems in the northern hemisphere, that's beginning to give it that more northerly kick, which is going to allow it, as it feels the weakness in that ridge, to turn to the north through the day today and into the overnight. Now, like I said, structurally not looking too good. In fact, the hurricane hunters have been flying around in it all morning, and they've actually found a couple of centers within it. Now the plane is flying back home here to Florida, so we're not getting any more additional observations from it. But you see the path it took. You see a couple of little loops it did as they were trying to find the center of the storm. As I switch over to the satellite presentation, it looks like more or less there are two sort of centers with Elsa. I also want to put a caveat here. If I at any point throughout this video call Elsa Ada, I have Ada on the mind because the impacts overall looking somewhat like Ada. They both start with the letter E. They both took a path, or likely this one's going to take a path right up the coast of Florida. If I say Ada, unless otherwise specify, I mean Elsa. Tropical Storm Elsa is what we're tracking here. So my apologies if I give this the wrong name at any point through the rest of the video, or if I already have. Have I?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Jesslyn. So anyway, circling in two spots where there was a low-level center detected, or at least a center of circulation detected. This one here is, I think, the mid or upper level center, and it's where some of that thunderstorm activity is really coalescing around. I think what we're seeing is the center of Elsa trying to reorganize, trying to back away from this one and try to reform underneath that convection. Anytime you're talking about sort of where is the center, there's two different centers, it's trying to reorganize, you're talking about a pretty disorganized system, a weak tropical cyclone. And, you know, when you look at the satellite presentation as I put this into motion, yeah, there was a decent swirl going on earlier on. Looked like maybe it was trying to wrap itself up under that mid-level center. But as I put that lapse into motion, that area of convection of thunderstorm activity appears to be collapsing. In fact, we're getting a blow-up of storms south of Jamaica now. That looks to be the healthiest thunderstorm activity at this point in time. So it's tough to say exactly what is going on within the core of Elsa. This looks like it might be some type of dry air injection going into the center right there, that sort of dry slot. We could be seeing some of the inflow being disrupted around the various mountains here in Cuba, Jamaica, and Hispaniola. Bottom line, it's no surprise to see those winds come down a little bit. And the central pressure, pretty sure it's at 1,007 millibars, 1,008 millibars, 1,007 millibars as of the 8 a.m., and now up to 1,009. That is not a very low central pressure, so it sort of stands to reason why the models are not very impressed with Ada and with Ada. I just did it. With Elsa and what it's going to do going forward. But all that being said, you know, the waters here are very, very warm, and it's moving more slowly now. So as it pulls away from Jamaica and sort of parallels the coast of Cuba, I do think there's a shot it'll be able to get its act back together at least a little bit. And the Hurricane Center's forecast does sort of reflect that. Note, they have the winds coming up as we go through the evening tonight and head into Monday as that begins to move its way onshore here in central Cuba. I think the big question in the near term continues to be exactly what path does this take? Does it continue on a more northerly track through the day today? Does it stay on a southerly track? When you look at the cone, again, the longer it stays offshore, the more it's over warmer waters, the more it could strengthen. The more it goes over Cuba, the more it spends over land and this rugged terrain. We're talking 4,000-foot peaks in central Cuba. That's going to further weaken the storm. So some models you look at, like say the European forecast model, not impressed with it right now, less impressed with it as it moves over Cuba. In fact, on the European, by the time we get to this evening, or Monday evening rather, it completely breaks the storm apart, has little left of that circulation going into Tuesday, really nothing left working into the Gulf of Mexico. Would be just some increased thunderstorm activity for us here in southwest Florida in that scenario. But it still remains an outlier at this point in time. Most models you look at intensity-wise still holding on to tropical storm intensity at the very least. In fact, you look at, it's called the H-WRF. That's a model that focuses in specifically on tropical storms and hurricanes. It's this deep purple line that I'm outlining with my mouse. By the time we would get to when this would be offshore southwest Florida, it actually has a little uptick in intensity here. The GFS does too. So you sort of see a dive down over Cuba and then a little bit of a ramp up before a big dive down when it moves over, in all likelihood, parts of Florida going into Wednesday. So, when we look at the cone. Official forecast from the Hurricane Center does keep the west coast of southwest Florida, the Gulf Coast that is, in the cone of concern. You have to remember what it shows you. The center could be anywhere from here to out here. And as we'll look at in the spaghetti plots, a good deal more model support for a more westerly track. That's some good news for us. The strength of the storm, how close it passes us, that's going to go a long way into determining what exactly our impacts are here in southwest Florida. But yeah, there's the spaghetti plots, the latest run, and a definite favorite track is starting to emerge amongst these. Most of the lines you look at bunching up offshore southwest Florida, moving up the coast. There's a good deal of them bundled up right here near the Tampa Bay area, making a landfall perhaps just north of Tampa, and then a second batch going a good deal further west than that and into the Big Bend, maybe even the Panhandle. One of those, that bright green, is the GFS forecast model, which all along has been very consistent on a path like this. So let's look at what that latest run shows. This is from this morning. Shows a weak Elsa moving onshore in Cuba. It also sort of breaks it down into just an open wave, but it does hold on to some semblance of that circulation. And we go into early Tuesday morning. It closed itself back off, tries to ramp up a little bit, still has a pocket of very heavy rainfall offshore, drags that along the coast near the Tampa area, and then it brings what's left of Elsa onshore, likely still as a tropical storm, in the Big Bend, the Panhandle near Apalachicola. Rain totals would look like this on the GFS forecast model. For us in southwest Florida, that would be nothing we can't deal with. That would be much like we see on a typical rainy season day. But I want you to note that corridor of very heavy rain sitting just offshore, 2, 3, 4 plus inches of rain. If Elsa is a little bit stronger, if Elsa comes a little bit closer to our coastline, we get into some of those heavy rain totals and we could be talking flooding. So you can't take that off the table just yet. We need to see how that rain is evolving as it moves off the coast of Cuba tonight, tomorrow, before we really know what we're dealing with rainfall-wise here in the area specifically. And then winds, you know, most models you look at right now keep our winds below tropical storm force. We still have that watch out for coastal Collier because I still think there's definitely the chance for 40-plus mile-per-hour winds along the coast in Collier, but know what the GFS does with a path further offshore, and these are wind gusts, not even sustained winds. It keeps the winds 25, 30 miles per hour top, so below tropical storm force. But again, if it's a little bit stronger, if it's a little bit closer, we could definitely get into those 40, 50-plus mile-per-hour winds right along the coastline. So that threat is still there per the Hurricane Center. And again, this is that 11 o'clock update. The percentage chance for tropical storm force winds, highest by the coast, highest from 75 to the beaches, and then really I think inland areas will be hard-pressed to see the winds getting to that strength. We're not talking a huge wind field with this right now. This isn't necessarily exactly like Eta was, and I mean to say Eta this time. Eta was last year. Remember, that storm started out as a monster hurricane in Central America. That weakened, still held together, and then sort of did that swirling path. But with that, it still had a pretty big wind field as it was moving through. This one's a little more compact. So we're going to have to get close to the center to get those stronger winds. And again, it's going to be very much dependent on how close it comes to the coastline and at what strength it is as it moves right by our coast. Along with that, though, sort of like what we saw with Eta, we have onshore winds throughout the day on Tuesday, especially if we're talking a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm like the Hurricane Center says. We're likely to deal with some coastal flooding, 2 foot above normal tides on Tuesday, some flooding of low-lying areas for us in Southwest Florida specifically. I'm thinking spots on Captiva, that tend to flood near the lighthouse on Sanibel, the northern end of Fort Myers Beach near Times Square. Yeah, we're likely going to be seeing some issues there at high tide. And then offshore, we're talking 5-foot-plus waves. That could lead to some coastal erosion here too. So as we wrap this up and look at the potential impacts, I think the highest risk right now is for flooding. Even at only a moderate risk at this point in time. It all depends on how the rain around Elsa will evolve as this moves north out of Cuba. Do we get into that corridor of very heavy rainfall? Does that stay just offshore? We could be talking, if this gets closer to us, 4+ inches of rain. The most likely scenario, though, does keep that heavier rain off to our west as Elsa moves northward. Most of us are going to keep winds below tropical storm force, it appears, at this point in time, but especially along the coast. I don't think you can rule out tropical storm force winds, even gusts to 50 and 60 miles per hour. So that's where the highest chance for any type of wind damage would be. And then again, coastal flooding looks to be an issue at high tide as well. Always the threat for tornadoes in a nearby tropical system. All the swirling winds around it, you can then say you can get a spin-up funnel or tornado, especially in the outer rain band. Something we'll be watching for, but at this point, the threat for that does appear to be fairly low. Timing-wise, we're talking the worst of the conditions late Monday through much of Tuesday, and then improvements on Wednesday. We'll, of course, be here with you at ABC 7 around the clock, tracking Elsa. We'll have frequent updates on air and online. Again, at this point, I wouldn't worry yourselves too much over Elsa, but I would also not sleep on the storm either. Be sure you're checking in with us. Be sure you're keeping one eye on the forecast. Things can change pretty quickly with tropical systems, and that's why we'll, again, be here with you throughout to bring you updates on air and online. So stick with us. Coming up tonight, Andrew Adams will have a full update on ABC 7 News at 6:30, and then Chief Meteorologist John Patrick, he'll be with you on ABC 7 News at 11 with the latest with a brand new cone. By then, most of us, if not all of us, will be back. We'll be in a tropical storm watch, if not warning, at that point in time. All right, until next time, Meteorologist Jim Dickey. Stay safe out there.